Hello, listeners. Welcome back to another Friday. Not just any Friday. The Friday before the spookiest night of the year.
Are you talking about my birthday?
No.
Because you get older.
And as always, joining me is my talented and beautiful co-hostess, Voyse.
Good morning, Timstradamus, and welcome to all my goblins and ghouls out there. I've got a funny joke for you, Timstradamus.
Hit me.
How do goblins read about their future?
Gobbledygook. I don't know.
Close. I guess it could be considered gobbledygook for some. They check their horoscopes.
Wow. For our new listeners, Voyse and I enjoy reading and talking about stories from the internet that are interesting, funny, and dramatic. Because of our love of stories, we've come together and created this channel to share with you those experiences.
And hopefully give you some food for thought.
Well, Voyse, what have you brewed today?
I have crafted you a concoction, my dear. It has green tea, pineapple, apples, elderberries, beetroot, peach, and raspberries.
Ah. Oh, man. That's magnificent.
I had a lot of my little dried fruits left behind, so I decided to really concoct something special.
Oh, that is so good. 10 pumpkins out of 10.
Yes! Well, while you go ahead and enjoy your morning brew, let us go ahead and delve right into these stories. For any listeners wanting to follow along, all story links are in the description below. For our first story, am I the a-hole for asking for money when my kids stay with me? I have a 9-year-old and 6-year-old boys with my ex. She's married to Michael, who has a 9-year-old boy, Xander, and lives full-time with them. Xander and my 9-year-old are not just stepbrothers, but best friends. They get along so well that they share a room and a king-sized bed. You cannot separate them. I find the whole thing funny, so Xander comes to my house whenever I have my own kids, Wednesday through Saturday. The thing is that Xander is a garbage disposal and eats everything. I took the 3 of them to In-N-Out, and Xander ate 4 cheeseburgers. Seriously. An hour later, he said he was hungry and ate 6 waffles. He's definitely not fat. He's skinny. I asked his dad if he could Venmo me $20 because his kid won't stop eating, and he said, "Why am I putting a price on our children's friendship?" He said that it was tacky. I told him that his kid ate $16 worth of burgers in one sitting, and he said that he often pays for my son's food, so why can't I pay for his son's? Am I the a-hole?
Oh, my stars. This story,
It's tasty, isn't it?
a little bit. 4 burgers? Count me in.
6 waffles?
Pass on that. Give me more burgers. This is coming from the husband. Well,
The
ex-husband.
Correct.
And he says that his son has a great relationship with his stepbrother.
Oh, yes.
Fantastic. Now, the stepbrother, he says it, is a garbage disposal. He will eat everything. Now, the only thing that really bothers me about this story is, because I guess I'll circle around to this real quick. OP, I don't believe you're the a-hole for asking about the money. Yes, fine, some people can see that as tacky, but you're allowed to ask the question. He ate 4 cheeseburgers, roughly totaling about $16. That's where my issue is. He's a 9-year-old. You shouldn't be giving that child carte blanche to get 4 cheeseburgers.
And then an hour later, 6 waffles.
That's where the problem of the story happens. Because if you'd given him the proper portions, you're not spending $16 on burgers just for him. I'm kind of floored that you found that acceptable. I mean, adults shouldn't be eating 4 cheeseburgers in one sitting. Why would a 9-year-old be doing that? You're not the a-hole for the asking of the question, but you are the a-hole for letting a child choose and tell you exactly what they want and to the degree of which that happened. There's no excuse for giving a kid 4 cheeseburgers at 9 years old and 6 waffles within an hour later.
And you know, it wasn't just 4 cheeseburgers. It's 4 cheeseburgers and fries.
See, at that point, you do need to do a little bit of critical thinking on your end. You are responsible for what you give to your children.
Well, the consensus on Reddit? Our OP's not the a-hole. You can definitely ask. And yeah, some people did call him out for being tacky regarding that. However, we had other Redditors come forward and saying, you're providing a child with childcare. you're not asking for much in return because that's not your child at all. You have no onus or responsibility to that child. If his parents providing him meals, if there's a problem to that, you don't need to be taking care of him. Now, yes, there were other commenters that say you need to start being the adult and you need to control the sizing portions of what they eat.
Yep.
And if something seems unreasonable, you need to go ahead and make it reasonable. Because having 4 cheeseburgers, possibly whatever fries, and then on top of that, an hour later, 6 waffles is definitely not healthy. Well, let's go ahead and hop right into our next story and see if we can get a good night's sleep. Am I the a-hole for requiring my 11-year-old daughter to attend a 9 a.m. volleyball practice after a sleepless sleepover? My 11-year-old daughter had a sleepover at a friend's house. She was told by my wife that she would have to be home early for practice. She was home at 8:15 and dawdled getting ready for 30 minutes. We were late. I told her there would be consequences like no sleepovers before early morning events. This is an ongoing problem with her being on time. My daughter accused me of being unfair and mean for forcing her to go to practice. Am I the a-hole for expecting her to attend a volleyball practice when she's tired from a sleepover? Edit. Not sure if I'm supposed to or allowed to edit my post. To answer many common comments that I can't possibly respond to one at a time. 1. She chose volleyball. I don't care if it's water polo or pool noodle jousting. It is her choice. Volleyball is not the hill I'm dying on. 2. She was required to choose one extracurricular activity. She has only one extracurricular activity. She chose volleyball. 3. It is not a long-term or strenuous commitment. We're talking about 2 hours per week for 4 weeks. 4. She enjoys volleyball. She didn't like being forced to attend practice. Edit 2. 5. She knew no matter what, barring illness or injury, that she was going to practice. It was clearly communicated and understood days in advance that going to the sleepover meant that attending practice was non-negotiable. She had a choice to not attend the sleepover. Practice was mandatory. Am I the a-hole?
So this is where I'll kind of stick my foot in the ground here, because how old is his daughter?
11.
All right, we're dealing with a very young kid. She's in volleyball. He outlines it for us that she does like volleyball. This isn't something that was forced onto her. Although he does say she had to pick one extracurricular. I believe that. That's good for the kids. Our son plays sports and plays 2 instruments. You know, I think those are good things to have. Now, we didn't force those things. There's something that he wanted to do.
Does he like having to stay to his set schedule? No.
No one does. But when you create good habits early on, it helps. So for me, I can understand that maybe he would understand as the father of his 11-year-old that based off of prior incidences, that she would not be very good at keeping to schedules. Okay, fair enough. But if he sat there and told his daughter no every single time she wanted to go to something, a sleepover, before an event or practice, if every time he said no, and I'm telling you no because I know you can't keep to going to sleep on time, he's taking out all control from his daughter. You've got to let them walk through that mess sometimes. Yes, she's showing up to that practice tired because she didn't get sleep. I cannot tell you how many times I've had practice while I was growing up for whatever sport I was playing during that season that I was dead tired because I was hanging out with my friends too late. But at the end of the day, honestly, you've got to be able to teach your kids accountability is important. When you have responsibilities, you can still have your fun. It teaches you some good lessons. And I agree with his standpoint. You know what? You're young. Deal with the process. Learn from it. If you don't want to be tired, you can still sleep over. Just make sure you go to sleep at a decent time. But you won't learn that type of responsibility if every time your father bails you out.
Understandable. Well, our consensus on this one was actually pretty split. Some, not the a-holes, say just as you. You're teaching her accountability. You clearly let her know that if she didn't get a good night's sleep, she was still going to practice. That's that. And then you had you're the a-holes out there who were saying, you should make sure that your child gets sleep. if they're clearly not going to sleep or not resting well when they're at a sleepover, then they shouldn't go to the sleepover, and you should make sure they have rest the day before an event, whether it's practice or not. I would have to say, I don't think that he's the a-hole at all. She only has one extracurricular, and even I have gone and done my fair share of staying up the night before something big happening the next day, and have learned my lesson that way. In fact, one of my really bad habits is when something exciting is happening the next day, I have such a bad problem with going to sleep. All I do is think about it, and then I'm tired the day of. Sometimes I wish I didn't know if something was happening and somebody would just tell me that day.
That first day of school syndrome.
Oh,
Do you not miss that growing up?
I don't. Although there are other first days of everything that always seem to happen that make me lack sleep.
That's very true.
If anything, you're teaching her to be accountable. And that right there is such a valuable lesson. You can't do that by hand-holding. For our next story, am I the a-hole for telling my friends dating facts? My good friend and I were talking about her dating life. She's been trying to find a partner for some years now and doesn't like to date a lot because of the time investment. I'm like her girlfriend, she complains to, and I happily enjoy the gossiping. So she got really frustrated with her last date, and I asked her what exactly she's looking for. She proceeds to tell me her preferences: makes $200,000 plus, no kids, never married, 6 foot tall, older than her, she's 37. I said that's perfectly fine. However, here's the math in that. I pulled up one of those dating calculators and showed her. She thought that was about 4% of men. I said it was 0.02%. And out of that pool, maybe half she will be attracted to. So she wasn't mad. But then I said, the other challenge is men like that have more options than a 37-year-old single mom with an 8-year-old son living in an apartment that has a problematic baby daddy. I didn't say it mean, just laying down the facts. So that annoyed her. She wasn't angry, like yelling at me, but her tone definitely changed and said I didn't need to be so blunt. Her body language also completely shifted to uncomfortable. Anyway, I don't think I'm the a-hole. One of my friends I told this to said I wasn't being one, but it was an a-hole thing to say. Was there a more tactful way to say that? Should I have been more tactful? Please don't bash her. She's a great woman, but dating has sucked for her since COVID. Am I the a-hole?
Jiminy Crickets. This story is a doozy. I don't think what OP said to his friend was bad. Now, obviously you can go about it in different ways. Whether or not it was too harsh or not depends on the person you're dealing with. Because you can have some friends that can totally deal with being forward and honest. And then you have some friends where you have to kind of beat around the bush and give it to them lightly. But the fact is, he's a good friend. He didn't just yes man you. He said he did some quick math. And the numbers did not crunch well.
That's fair.
And you are allowed to have your preferences and your lists. But if all you're ever going to do is walk around holding up a piece of paper going, do you click off every single one of these things? You're going to be lonely.
That makes it sound very much like an objectified relationship.
Superficial. And who wants to feel like a list to their partner?
I don't. Now, I will say this. Our OP has made it clear that their friend isn't looking for a sugar daddy. While she might be asking that whomever she's going to date makes $200,000, it's only because she already makes $175,000. And she's looking for someone that's within the same range. And I'm supposing it's for that so that they're on even ground together.
And like I said before, you're allowed to have your preferences. But she also wants someone at that age to, I guess, not have been married. So she's saying that she doesn't want someone with baggage. But in turn, she's also got baggage. I get having to make sure someone matches what you make if that's how you feel secure in a relationship. I will say this, at least OP, I can say you are a good friend.
Well, our consensus on Reddit is that our OP's not the a-hole. In fact, a lot of them say, you could have said it with more tact, of course. Anything could be said with more tact. But what you said wasn't unfair. And there were a lot of people that mistook our OP's friend as trying to find a sugar daddy when it sounds like she's just trying to find someone that's on the same level when it comes to where they are career-wise. And as you said, don't have baggage on them regarding previous anythings. Now, let me go ahead and provide you with a comment from our OP and an update. So our OP says in the comment section, I don't think it's fair to say she's shit for having her standards. I just think she doesn't get that guys in that range also have their standards too. I work with those guys. I hear the trash they say about single mothers. Now on to the update. Our OP put, edit. We texted last night and I told her what my other friend said. She laughed and said she wasn't at all mad at me, just mad at men. She called me the R word for even worrying about it. Anyway, good discussion, folks.
Oh, well, there you go. At least that friendship isn't over something as silly as this.
Agreed. Now, let's go on to our last story of the day. And Timstradamus, I'm giving you a gift. It's with American football.
Hey, let's go.
Am I the a-hole for telling my wife's son that there's absolutely zero chance he'll ever play for a D1 college football team? I am a 39-year-old man. My soon-to-be wife, as in 2 days we're filing the paperwork, Jessica is 38. She has a son from a previous relationship, Rick, who is 17. Early on in our relationship, Jessica introduced me to Rick, and I was happy to find common ground with him in our love for American football. Rick is quite a player, and I played in both high school and university. I played D1 college football as an offensive lineman, and Rick plays varsity as a wide receiver. He currently expresses his desire to play D1 college football as well. I've always tried to strongly suggest that it may be hard for Rick. He's a good player, but to play on a D1 team, you have to be a freak of nature. I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but when I was a high school senior, I squatted 495 pounds and bench pressed 350 at 6'5", 310 pounds. I ran the 40 in 5.41 seconds. I was not even the strongest or fastest guy on my team's offensive line either. Rick is 6'1", 210 pounds, big kid. He squats 340 and bench presses 225. His best 40 is 5.49. Last night, Rick came to me saying that he wanted to get scouted by a D1 team and that he was going to write a letter to the University of Georgia, home for the best college team.
Go Dogs.
2 issues. 1, D1 teams don't recruit from his league. And 2, any D1 coach would walk away within 30 seconds of seeing Rick play. I essentially told him it was a waste of time. I said he may be able to squeeze by on a D2 team or even a D3 team and should focus on that instead. But he got very upset with me and said that I didn't know the current state of the game, which has only gotten stronger over the past 20 years. When I went to bed with Jessica, she told me I should use my connections to get his foot in the door. I don't understand what those connections are supposed to be, seeing as my college coach died 10 years ago. She started sulking about how I'm crushing his dream, but I really need to make clear that it is completely impossible for Rick. Even in the cosmically unlikely scenario that he did get recruited, the first time he got the ball, he'd be leaving the stadium on a stretcher. I feel terrible, but does my being realistic make me an a-hole here?
Butter my butt and call me a biscuit. Because, oh man, this is a good story. Good way to end off Friday. All right, so look, he was a D1 athlete. Yes, times change, but he also outlines what his future stepson Rick's statistics are. And he also says that D1 doesn't recruit out of the school he's going to. That can be a problem. Rick in this story can have the aspirations of going D1. There are routes to get there, even if you don't get there initially. But you have to, like our OP alluded to, be a freak athlete. You just have to be gifted sometimes. Rick, unfortunately, doesn't meet a lot of the requirements that would tell you that he's a special elite athlete. I'm not saying that you couldn't develop into one. There are plenty of people across every sport that's ever been played by mankind that have beat the odds, that don't meet the measurables. But you know what? They had the heart. That's where it starts. I hope that Rick, your stepson, doesn't get disheartened by this whole thing and perseveres. Look at that as a personal challenge, because a lot of the time, people just need a chip on their shoulder. I hope that he sees that and he rises to the challenge. So for me, when we're talking about this story, OP, you are not the a-hole.
Well, our consensus is that our OP is not the a-hole. In fact, let me go ahead and read to you 2 of his comments, which I think provided more insight, at least to me. A commenter asked, has his coach told him? Our OP says, yeah, his coach has told him as much. He'd have to cut nearly a full second off his 40 to be on par with other D1 WCs, and that just does not happen. I've been in elite football camps and playing against the best of the best since I was 8, and the one thing you learn is that fast kids were always fast.
Yep.
Additionally, our OP says, I wouldn't call him dumb, just naive. He plays on a team where he's the star and has never stepped onto a field with kids who actually are going to end up in D1 teams. But yeah, as an offensive lineman, I had a faster 40 than his as a WC. That alone should be indication that he's not quite there and most likely never will be.
The saying, unfortunately, is you can't teach speed. You either have it or you don't. I think the one thing that tickled me the most, though, is the wife believing that if she could get her husband to use his connections to get him a position on the football team, like, that's not how it works.
It's not. And I suppose that there probably are people out there with connections, but he's straight up. He says, look, are you telling me to try and figure out who I should ask now when my coach has passed away 10 years ago? I'm like, ooh.
Yeah.
He's
being honest.
He is. And I understand it from his current partner's point of view. She just wants her son to have all the support that he needs. However, sometimes support is giving your kid the truth. Not in a mean way. He's not being mean. He's just telling him, statistics wise, based on my experiences, I can't see it happening. But it doesn't mean that it can't happen. Make this your motivator. It doesn't have to stop with somebody telling you to stop.
So, was that our last story?
Touchdown! Yes, we're there.
That was a good way to end off. Well, as our stories come to a close, don't forget, you see in the world what you carry in your heart.
If you have enjoyed us reading and talking about today's stories, please rate, subscribe, or follow and turn on notifications for new content. We regularly post on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We would also love to give our warmest thanks to all of our patrons for your support. We greatly appreciate it.
Love every single one of y'all. Well, we'd love to hear your opinions in the comments below. And as always, listeners, I'll leave you the question that I do every single Friday. What are the weekend plans?
I'm excited for us to go to a Halloween murder mystery party.
Yeah, we look forward to that. We're going to it. I guess it'd be right after this.
Yes.
Let us go to deuce. It was me. And remember, if you post it, maybe we'll figure out who murdered someone.
Maybe. I think it was Scarlett in the library with the rope.
Great Scott.